This next section deals with simple interest. And really, simple interest is just another type of percent application. The difference is we're going to have different formulas, a different formula for it though, because we actually don't just have a percent involved now, but we also have a time period involved. So it's a little bit different. But first, what is simple interest? So simple interest is money that you're either earning or being charged on a principal, right? So principal is a key term here. The principal is always the starting amount. Now, if you have an investment, that's when you're earning interest. So you would earn interest on an investment, and when you have a loan, that's when you're being charged interest. Okay, so you earn interest on an investment and you'd be charged interest on a loan. Now, the amount of interest is going to depend on the interest rate, which for our purposes should always be expressed as an annual, meaning yearly, percentage. All right, so annual just means yearly, right? So as a yearly or annual percentage. So then the higher the rate, the higher the interest that is accrued, whether either being earned or being charged, right? So the higher rate is good if you have an investment, but a higher rate is bad if you have a loan because then you're paying more interest. But if it's an investment, it's good because then you're making more interest. So the other thing it's going to depend on, of course, is what I just talked about before, is the time, which must always be expressed in years. And the reason that it has to be expressed in years is that the rate is always expressed as an annual or yearly percentage. So to match that, the time then has to be also in years. Okay, so since the rate is going to be a yearly rate, the time has to be in years. And then there's your formula for computing simple interest. It's right there. I equals PRT. So I, capital I, is the interest. The capital P, instead of being percent in this case, and this is why it's a little bit confusing, I guess, right? Because we've been using A equals P times B, and we've been calling P percent. Now here, P is actually the principal, and R is going to be the percent, right? R is going to be the rate, and T is going to be the time, okay? So the capital I is the interest. The capital P is principal or starting amount. The R is the rate, which is the percentage, and the T is time. So now we can use this formula. So simple example, find the simple interest on a 3-year loan of $5,000 at 6.25% interest. So just like with the percent problems, how we would always go back to A equals P times B, here we should always go to I equals PRT and just identify what's what. So we're trying to find the simple interest. So we're trying to find the I if we know the time is 3 because it's 3 years. The loan amount or the starting amount is $5,000. That's your capital P. And your interest rate is 6.25%. So that's going to be your R. So we're trying to find I here. So we just go left to right. I equals capital P, which is $5,000. R, which is 6.25%, which we will write as 0.0625 times T, which is 3, and then we just multiply this. So we just go across. So we've got 5,000 times 0.0625 times 3, which is $937.50. So it's $937.50 in interest. So then the other thing that we can do is also find what's called the maturity value of a loan, which basically amounts to the principal added to the interest. So in this case, if you want a formula for it, you can call it A for like total amount, which is the principal plus the interest. If you want to do that, you can. You don't have to even have a formula for it. Just realize that you're adding the principal and the interest. So in this case, I'm adding the 5,000 with the 937.50, and that's going to be 5,937.50. So that would be your maturity value. So what that is that's the total amount that you pay back after the 3 years. Right? So after the 3 years, you'd have to pay back 5,937.50. Now the nice thing about having an equation again, as we did with the percent equation, we can actually solve for other variables. We don't always have to find I, right? So we can find other variables just by solving a simple equation. So in the case of this, they're telling us the interest was $200, right? So that's your I, and it was a 16-month loan. So that's going to help us get T, but again, remember that's not T because it has to be in years. And then our 5% is going to be our rate, right? But if 16 months is the length of the loan, how much is that in years? Well, what you really have to do is something that we honestly haven't done yet in the class is convert months into years. But I mean, I think you should probably know how to do that. In this case, since there's 12 months in a year, you're just going to divide 16 by 12. So it's just 16 twelfths, which is actually 4/3. So the time is going to be 4/3. So now I can again write I equals PRT. The difference is I know what the interest is, and I'm trying to find the principal or the amount of the loan, right? The amount of the loan, that's what you're calling your p-value. So I knew the interest was 200, the rate was 5%, which is 0.05, and the time was 4/3. So what I would do here is I'd multiply 0.05 and 4/3, get this wacky decimal, which I can then just immediately turn into a fraction. So it's 1/15th. So it's p times 1/15th. And if I want to get rid of that 1/15th, the way to look at it is I just multiply both sides by 15, right? Because then that's going to cancel the 15 down there with the 15 there. So I'm going to have 200 times 15, which is 3,000. So the principal in this case, or the amount of the loan, was $3,000. Okay. Now you could have also done that on the calculator a different way. If you had wanted to do the 0.05 times 4/3 first, and then realize that I'm going to have to do 200 divided by this answer. So I can type in 200 divided by ants, and you see where it says ants above that negative sign. So I do second negative sign, and it's also going to give me the 3,000, right? So bottom line is if you have a crazy decimal like this in the calculator, you don't want to clear it out. You want to leave it in there because that's stored more precisely than if you just rounded it to like 0.0667 or something like that, okay? So you want to leave it in there and then recall it as the answer when you're doing a calculation. So 200 divided by the answer gave me 3,000. So that was my amount of the loan. So we've used our interest formula to find the interest and the principal. So now we'll use it to find the interest rate. So we're trying to find the interest rate on a 2-year loan. So the 2 years, that's going to be your T. The loan amount is 11,500, so that's going to be your principal. And the interest amount, which is your I, is going to be your 920. So you again just rewrite I equals PRT, substitute all these values, and now on the right side you multiply 11,500 and 2, so you get 23,000 R equals 920, and then you just divide both sides by 23,000. And that'll give you 0.04, so the rate is 0.04, but 0.04, as we know, you must write as a percent, so it's 4%. So the interest rate is 4%. So we found the interest, the principal, and the rate. Now the final thing to do is to find the time. So the question says how long, so that means that you're finding the time. Must $5,000 be invested? That's your principal, right? Your principal is the amount of the investment. The rate is 8%, so that's your R. And you want to earn $1,000 in interest. So the $1,000 is your I. So you again will just go I equal PRT and replace. 1,000 equals 5,000 times 0.08 times T, but in this case I'm trying to find the T. Multiply 5,000 and 0.08 and I'm going to get 400. And now to solve this, I would just divide by 400. And 1,000 divided by 400 is actually just going to be 2.5. So 2.5 years it'll take to earn $1,000 in interest. right? Because 8% is a pretty high interest rate. That's not really too realistic to get 8% interest, but it'll only take 2.5 years. So then just some random problems after that, converting time into years, and we'll have whole sections on this later in the semester. To convert months into years, you're just going to divide by 12. So you would do 4 divided by 12. So 4 months is actually 1/3 years. And to turn days into years, what you really want to do is you really want to basically simplify it. So think of 30 days a month times 12 months would be 360 days in the year. So you want to do 270 divided by 360, just to make it simpler. Because if you use 365, it's not going to be a nice fraction. Whereas if you use 360, 270 over 360 is just 3/4. All right. And then just some more problems. Find the simple interest. So you're finding I. The loan is 2,500. That's your P. 9.25% is 0.0925 and 1.5 years, right? Because 9.25 is 9.25%, but then you still have to turn it into a decimal. So then punch that in the calculator. You get 346.875, but we want to round this to the nearest cent, so it's 346.88. So $346.88 would be your interest. And then we have one we have to find a principal, but again, you're doing I equal PRT, never lose the formula. I know the interest in this case is 140. You have to dig for it a little bit, but you find it. The principal is what I'm finding. The rate is 8.4%, which is 0.084. And the time is going to be 4 months, which we just said before is 1/3 years. So in this one, you're going to want to multiply 0.084 and 1/3 on the calculator. That'll give you 0.028. So it's going to be P times 0.028. And then to get rid of that 0.028, we'll divide by it. So we'll divide by 0.028. Do that on the calculator. And that gives us 5,000 exactly. So the principal, in this case, the loan amount was $5,000. So those are pretty straightforward. The only one that's a little bit trickier is this last one, because what they're asking you from this last one is how much must she repay in total. So when they're asking you how much she must repay, that's going to be the interest plus the principal. That's what we called the maturity value earlier, right? So that's the maturity value. So you're going to add the interest to the principal. So you first need to find the interest when you know she borrowed $500. The rate was 12%, which is 0.12. And 90 days, remember to simplify it, you do 90 over 360. That's 1/4 of a year. And then when you multiply these things on the calculator, you just get 15. So I is 15, so she's paying $15 in interest. But how much must she repay? It's going to be I plus P, so it's going to be 15 plus the loan, which is $515, which isn't a bad deal. But this is pretty unrealistic. I don't think you'd be able to get a 90-day loan of $500 and only have to pay back $15 extra, right? So $515 she'd have to repay after the 90 days.